Hey, thanks for watching. This is what I'm calling marketing assistance from Parks Ag Solutions, where we do a little bit deeper dive into a topic or news story that's important to agriculture. So we're in April of 23. We just had the USDA report out on March 31st, which was quarterly stocks as well as Prospective planting report, which is going to be the first initial look at what we can see planted in the United States on corn and beans this spring. So why do I think this is important? I think it's good that you have an understanding not over what the overall numbers are, but when you dive into particular states and what those numbers are doing, especially when you get busy, when you get planting, when you get spraying during the growing season. That way, when you hear those numbers, you're like, oh, that's what that means. So it's not just an arbitrary number, right? It's a number that means something to you. So let's talk about quarterly stocks first, and let's start with corn. So the number they came out with was a 7.4 billion. 4.1 of that is on the farm, and 3.3 of that is off the farm. So compared to last year, the number's a little bit lower. So last year, the quarterly stocks was at a 7.7, with 4.0 billion being on the farm and 3.68 being off the farm. So even though we have lower quarterly stocks compared to this time last year, we actually have more on the farm than what we did last year. I find that kind of fascinating. So in the Eastern Corn Belt, that's where we're seeing most of the corn stocks, which I guess really doesn't surprise me too much considering the weather that we had. You know, the Western Corn Belt was dry, less bushels. Eastern Corn Belt had a really decent crop, more bushels. So compared to last year, we're seeing Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, and Missouri all have more corn stocks now compared to last year. Ohio, which had a good corn crop, is very close to the same of what they have in stocks. The largest holding states is Illinois at 1.3 billion of that. Iowa also pretty close to the 1.3 billion. Minnesota, and we always know Minnesota is one of those bigger states of producing corn. They have 856 million bushels in stocks. Nebraska, 683 million. And Indiana is the next one down at 583 million bushels still in stocks. Now, looking at on the farm, you know how I mentioned earlier, there seems to be more on the farm compared to last year. So I was looking at those bigger states and just comparing this year to last year. So in Illinois, last year, there was 560 million. This year, 620 million bushels of corn in stocks on the farm. Okay. In Indiana, another big one, last year, 310 million, this year, 355. And I did put Kentucky in there because I know a lot of you in Kentucky watch this. So last year was at 69 million, this year's at 61. So Kentucky is one of those states that actually has less corn in stocks right now this year compared to last year. Now, let's look at soybeans. 1.68 was billion is the current stocks number. 746 of that is on the farm. 935 of that is off the farm. Compared to last year, the number was bigger. All stocks were at 1.93 million. 750 of that was on the farm. 1.18 was off the farm. And again, probably especially on soybeans, most of that's going to be in processing plants, but elevators, processing plants, and stuff like that. So there is less stocks in soybeans on all locations, doesn't matter if it's on the farm or in the processing plants and then in the grain elevators compared to 22. And I think that's where some of this concern is coming from for our ending stocks to continue to be decreasing on soybeans. That's where some of this is coming from because, hey, we just have less stocks now compared to last year. There's only 2 states with more soybean stocks compared to last year, Missouri and Ohio. And we know Ohio had a good soybean crop. So I guess that makes some sense. Now, prospective planting. So the numbers that came out, actually, let me pull up a graph first. So before we get into the numbers, let me pull up a whiteboard. Okay, so as you can see, this is then the corn and soybean planted acres in the United States. And this is just a graph showing in the blue, showing the corn, and in the yellow dotted dash line, so, showing the soybeans. So 2019 was a big prevent plant year, so neither corn nor beans really went up in 2019. And as you can see, they do have the 23 plotted there. If you go, though, after that, most of the time it's an inverse, right? If corn acres are high, if that blue line is high, you see the soybeans then being a little bit less and trending lower. So let's talk numbers now, okay? So on corn, prospective planting, 92 million acres, which was at the high of the range of when that number came out. Last year, that number was at 88.6. On soybeans, very close to the same, 87.5. Last year, you could say we were at 87.5 or 87.46 or something like that. So corn intentions are right now are higher or unchanged in 40 of the 48 continuous planting states. So soybeans are close to unchanged compared to last year, but we are seeing record numbers of planting intentions on beans in Illinois, Nebraska, the state of New York, Ohio, and Wisconsin. Now, the next question everybody asks is, where do these numbers come from? And they come from NASS, N-A-S-S, National Agricultural Statistics Services, statistical services. And they're farmer surveys that they send out. And I just saw a video the other day, and it was a survey, and I'm sure it was one of these. I'm sure of it because it was just literally, it hadn't been a video that long ago. And he's taking that survey and throwing it in the trash. So his numbers are not going to be in here. But yeah, so they send out farmer surveys, and that's where this comes from. Corn, 4% higher than last year. In some of the high producing state or the states here, Illinois, 2% higher, Indiana, 5% higher, and Kentucky, 10% higher on corn compared to last year. So everybody is like on the internet and newsletters that I get are talking about like that northeastern or northwestern corn belt and the snow that they've been getting. So I was curious what the USDA had for those numbers. North Dakota, 3.75 million acres. Last year it was 2.95. Okay, so quite a bit more. South Dakota is more, but not nearly as dramatic as North Dakota. South Dakota is a 5.9, 5.75 is what they were last year. Minnesota increase, not as dramatic, 8.35 compared to an 8.0 last year. So I looked up those states. So then the next question is, well, are they even going to get that planted? Or is there going to be a bunch of prevent plant corn In those states, again, because of snow and because of flooding, just like last year, that they had a lot of prevent plant because of weather. So I looked up on the RMA website what the final plant date and then the end of the late plant period was for these areas. And I just picked up a county because I don't know North Dakota or South Dakota. So Grand Forks County in North Dakota, the final plant date is May 25th, and the end of the late plant period is June 19th. In South Dakota, Butte County, same dates, May 25th for the final plant date. End of the late plant period is June 19th. And then in Minnesota, I looked at Blue Earth County. It's a little different. That final plant date is the end of May at May 31st. And then the final plant date or the end of the late plant period is June 25th. So those are the dates, because I know, again, the newsletters I get, that's always the next question. Well, isn't there going to be a lot of prevent plant? These are the dates that they have. So we'll have to see what their weather does between now and then. So, and I will say, the marketing meetings that I was going to in February, and I went to a handful of them, and they always have a weather person, right? They always have a weather person. And in February, there wasn't these big storms coming in from the west and dropping a lot of rain or dropping a lot of snow in that upper northwest. So at that point in time, nobody was talking about prevent plant. And in fact, a couple of them said, we don't think there's going to be any prevent plant. It will be very interesting now with the snow, how much they've got with the weather warming up, flooding, stuff like that, if there is actually prevent plant in that upper northwest. Beans, as far as planting intentions, are up 4% from last year. Illinois, up 4%. Indiana, up 4%. Kentucky, up 8%. The big states, like the lot of acre states, we did mention Illinois at 11 million acres. Last year, they were at 10.6. Iowa, pretty much exactly the same at a 10.4 million. And then Minnesota, slight increase, 8 million compared to 7.65. So where are we seeing the highest increases of soybeans? We're seeing them in Texas. Right now, they're expecting about a 45% increase in soybeans, and in Georgia at 21% increase. And really, that doesn't surprise me, because we were hearing as some of the commodities that are grown in those areas, the prices were really going down. And there has been the question if we were going to see more beans planted in those areas. According to the USDA, yes. So here, I don't know of large acres. I've heard a little bit of scratching around or testing the planter, but not a lot going in yet, considering we are past April 5th. Southern Indiana, Southern Illinois is open to plant on both corn and soybeans right now. So that is what I have as far as quarterly stocks. Now you have an idea what those numbers have first come out at. We will continue to see on the quarterly stocks of what we head towards of ending stocks. And then we'll have to watch the weather and who gets started planting soon in the United States for corn and soybeans. Hey, thank you for watching. I know this is kind of like an experimental thing. I think this is the fourth. Yeah, so we're in April. So this is the fourth video so far. I will be doing one in May. So when you're planting, please be careful. There's a lot going on. A lot has your attention. So thank you for watching. Make sure you get some rest, and I'll see you next month. Bye. Whoops.